we're gonna talk about Okinawan martial arts here. In the beginning, it was something called Tode, and Tode later became karate. And in this transformation, it was in the what happened was Okinawa martial arts went to mainland Japan, and they really couldn't call it Tode because the To actually means Tang, and Tang is one of the dynasties in China, and Japan wasn't really friendly with China at that period. And so so what they did is they came up with the terms Shurite, Nahate, and Tamarite, three regions. Whereas Tamarite was actually a village of Nahate, and Shurite was the kingdom, was a Ruku kingdom. And so they introduced them by those three regions. And it's important to note that Tode doesn't mean China hand, it means Tang hand, Tang dynasty, which is different, significantly different than just in China. China is a whole country. We have these different dynasties of different nations. So it's actually Tang and not China. It's important to note that part before we go on. And what happened was, before it was called karate, in the end, there was another person that discovered that term, they used that term before Kishin Funakoshi. His name was Chomo Hanashiro. Shomo Hanashiro. He was also a school teacher, just like Funakoshi, and he used that in a book that he wrote on cover. Funakoshi saw that, and he wanted to get credit for it. And so what happened was, when he changed the name from Tode to karate, what happened was he dropped two big things, really big things in karate that dropped. That makes it significantly different. One was the grappling, and two was self-defense. In order to promote the new style of karate in mainland Japan, they had to do it within the educational systems. So they made it into a physical education, and they promoted it within the schools and the universities. Therefore, they dropped the hardcore self-defense, hand-to-hand combat, put it that way. That way you get a bigger picture. It's not just like regular self-defense. It's more or less hand-to-hand combat, close quarters combat. That's what Tode was. Karate is not like that in that sense. It was dropped. And so what happened is with Funakoshi, basically you look at Funakoshi's style, he's more of a philosopher. So when he branded karate and named it and branded it and took it from Tode karate, he made a curriculum around how he studies. And that took a lot out of what Today was that combative art, that tradition of Okinawa, that fighting spirit, that warrior class martial art, and it turned it into a schoolyard curriculum. Moving forward with the interaction with Choki Matubu and Gishin Funkoshi. Now, Choki Matubu, warrior, combat artist. It was a hand-to-hand combat martial artist. He didn't lose. He beat the boxer that the Japanese couldn't beat. So what happened was, Gishin Funakoshi took credit for that also. And so Motobu really didn't like Funakoshi for numerous reasons. Funakoshi claimed that he was a regular student of Itosu, Uncle Itosu, which wasn't true. The only real evidence of a teacher that Gishin Funakoshi trained under as a regular student, as his primary student, was Anko Asato. That was it. The other ones, too many historical masters. Choshin Chibana said no. Toyama says no. Motobu says no. Aha says no. You have too many masters at that time period that was highly against things that Funakoshi was doing because of the way he was doing it. Not what he was doing, but how he was doing it. It was dishonorable to the arts to act that way, to make claims that you did this and you did that when you couldn't back it up. And it ended up with multiple beating Funakoshi in a match in front of the students. And to show that what he was claiming wasn't true. But on the flip side, Funakoshi was a remarkable scholar. So in the martial arts, we have people that's really good at different things. It's important to stay in your lane. Scholars, you're scholars. You're going to help. You're going to help us know where things came from. You're going to help us know where this is from. This is what this is. You're going to help us with different things. You're going to help us with understanding the history, the philosophy, those aspects. The warriors are going to help us with more combative skills. This actually works. These methods work for this reason. Keeping the combat in the martial arts alive and well. So everybody has a part in the martial arts, but you have to remain within them parts and stay within that. And the best way to know what master trained under what master, or what master was in what period, or did whatever, or what their birth dates were, the time period, or whatever, is if they held the name patient, then all that stuff is documented through the government records and a lot of family records. And that's what we look at. Folklore, we don't look there. Old folk tales, no. We don't look in those places. Because those are just stories. That's what we call today is hearsay. Those are just stories. Like, for example, Sakugawa. Sakugawa was supposed to be born in 1733. We find that out not to be true. With government records, family records, stating that he wasn't born until 1782, and he lived until 1862. Now, you can go a little bit before that, a little bit after that, of each birth and death. You know, mistakes happen, but that's the time period. That is the time period that he was born, and the time period that he died. Which means he could not have trained under Kusanku. He could not have trained under Takahara. And speaking on Sakugawa, I recently read an article saying that before World War II, there was no articles stating that Sakugawa was the teacher of Matsumura. That didn't start until after the Second World War. So, is it true? I don't know. More research is required for that. But that's it's interesting to think about how does that play in the lineage of the martial arts. The lineage is very important because then you know where something came from. One of the not most, but more important families that I found was the Matayoshi family. They're the Kabuto, on the Kabuto side. And the Matayoshi family, their lineage goes way back. It goes way back in the Okinawan history. And their ancestors done a lot of things. So you can trace that lineage back. You can trace different other lineages. And with their family records, they have the lineage of so many other masters. More so than just going and looking at different other areas. So when you look something up and you find something, you got to be very careful. Who tells you it? Why they're telling you it? Does it serve a purpose for them? Does it make them into a bigger martial artist? Is it building up their style? Those aspects are very important. One source that I find very relevant is fightingarts.com. They don't only tell you what's going on. They give you references. They give you researchers. There's researchers on there. There is certified researchers. People that actually, that's their profession. There's like Kenjo. Kenjo it's like his father and his grandfather was researchers. So listen to them, that's important, because they know what they're talking about. There's another one called Haiga. another great researcher. He's one of the ones that kind of laid the foundation for a lot of the stuff that we read on the martial arts today, the Okinawan martial arts. So it's important where you get your information. I always tell people, I might tell you something, but don't listen to me. Listen to what I say, and then look it up in a correct place. Don't just take somebody's word for something, because you don't know where they got it at. There's things that I said, I look back on and I said, oh, I gotta fix that. That's a little incorrect there. I don't want somebody to think that's correct and that's be wrong on that. It's not good. By that point, I live life by 5 rules: wisdom, ethics, honesty, accountability, and integrity. If you don't go by those 5, hopefully you go by some similar 5, or you have some type of morals to stand your ground on, so you become a great martial artist and a good person. And it's really important to know that when you step out there on a mat, that you know what you're doing. You know what you're teaching. How are you self-defense? Are you teaching your students something that can get them hurt, maybe killed? Is it too flashy? When you're taking a gun from somebody, you taking it to the right or the left? You know, your heart sits on the left. It's just common sense to take it to the right and step to the left. That makes more common sense. Understand anatomy. What do you know about the vital points? What do you know about the pressure points? If you get somebody in the holes and wrist locks, you like to grapple, you like jiu-jitsu, you like all that stuff. What do you know about comfort? What do you know about resuscitation? What do you know about ancient first aid? If you hurt somebody in training, do you know the martial way to bring them back? Do you know how to do it? Do you know how the martial way of applying first aid to it? If you don't, you have no business even teaching a wrist lock. You have to educate yourself first. You have to teach yourself. You have to make sure that you have that knowledge before you step on that mat and teach anything. If you don't, you are taking people down the wrong road, and that is why the martial arts is the way it is today. I was watching a video on something else, but it kind of applies to martial arts if you think about it. All right, so this person was given a interview with somebody, and they was talking about who's the best basketball player, Michael Jordan or LeBron James. And so he took him through this road, and he says, well, do you think that basketball was a really great sport? Everybody liked it back in the 1990s? I said, yeah. Everybody loved it back then. It was thriving. Everybody loved basketball. It was real thriving. But well, now, what do you think about basketball? It's like a little, it's not as, people, it kind of went downhill, right? You go, yeah, it went downhill. Okay, now you got to think about it like this. Back in the 90s, the superstar was Michael Jordan. Today, the superstar is LeBron James. So what does that say about each person? Same thing with martial arts. Same exact thing. The masters that ran it in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and even in the 2000s today. Okay? Think about each decade. How is the martial arts being ran? Who's the top masters of that style? Who's running it? Who's making it? Or of those leagues? Whoever you follow, organizations, whatever it might be. Back in the day, it was great. Today it's not. It's not the members' fault of the organizations. It's not the students' fault of that style. Who are their leaders? Who is leading them? Who is guiding them? That's whose fault it is. They need to check themselves. And they need to redo the martial arts. Redo the way they teach it. You can bring things to the future and of age and introduce new things without downing and watering down the martial arts. There's things you can do. You don't have to water down the arts. It's simple. You want to train? Let's train. You want to cheerlead? Okay, there's leagues you can go to for cheerleading. You want to jump and do flips? All right, there's gymnastics for that. Or they do have certain martial arts. It's just for that. Keep it out of other martial arts. There are certain martial arts that structure certain things. We need to keep them that way. If we don't, we're losing touch with what the martial arts really is. So we have to think about, what are we doing? What is the martial arts really doing? Are we more for the money? Or for the art? We're going to pass it on, generation to generation. I mean, money comes and goes. And if they really want to train, they're going to pay that money to stay there. They're going to invest in themselves. We don't have to, as masters of martial arts, we don't have to water things down or make things like more approachable. No, we don't have to do that. All we have to do is be dedicated teachers of the arts and say, this is what it is. This is how we teach it. You want to learn this. If they do, we teach it to them. If they don't, we don't teach it to them. Simple. Simple. It's simple. Otherwise, you're not a master. You're not a sensei. You're a businessman or a businesswoman. You're teaching what people want you to teach them. That's it. You're doing what they want instead of doing what the art claims you to do as a sensei. Wait. The code of honor. Or we can go to the Bushido. You have to have some type of code you go by. You have to have some type of morals you go by. You have to have something you go by. Mine might be different than yours. Whatever. But it has to be strict codes that you take those words that you say and you put meaning behind it instead of just doing it. Instead of just running it through there. So you have to have some type of purpose when you're teaching. Think back when you first started. Think when you was a novice Then you became an intermediate. How great that felt. And you did all that hard work, trained hard, did all that stuff, and you become an advanced rank. If you put on a brown belt, maybe a red belt, maybe a green orange, who knows? And you put on those different belts. And then the time came when you became a black belt. And when you put on that black belt, think of how you felt. Think of how you felt inside, knowing that you was a black belt now. When you put on that black belt, you put on the belt of responsibility. You put that gi on, you test it. You put on that gi of honor. So you have to understand that you have a responsibility to keep your honor within the martial arts. Not just to go out there and try to sell somebody something. It's not a gym membership. It's a way of life. Once you become a black belt, you're a black belt forever. And the key is many different types of black belts. What kind of black belt are you? Are you a black belt? Or are you somebody who just wears a black belt? That's the big question. What are you? What do you know? What do you know about philosophy? What do you know about traditional medicine? What do you know about healing somebody that's in class that hurts, bringing by the first aid? What do you know about them things? What do you know about the kata? You know where it came from. The techniques. You know how to execute it. You know why we execute the way we execute it. Hip rotations. Do you know why they rotate that way? Do you know why everything is executed the way it's executed? Do you know the science behind the martial arts? Do you know how all the science works? You have to master all that before third degree black belt. Most don't. Not today. I remember it was back in the 1980s. A third degree black belt in the 1980s was like a 6th degree black belt today. When you go to the championships and you see them. And you see them compete. That's ridiculous. That's just crazy. A third degree black belt was like a 6th degree today. And what happened? And you know, just think about it. Think about what do you want to do? What do you want to do? How do you want your legacy to be? If they'll be teaching, that's your legacy. They're going to bring your name up often. Like I bring my teacher's name up often. My teacher, he grew up, well, one of my teachers, he grew up in the streets of Chicago, 8 years old. He had to fight off people. He had to learn how to throw bricks, fight people. Did 10 years of boxing. Then he got into martial arts. Then he got into karate. And as a green belt, he was fighting black belts. He was undefeated. Then he went through the ranks and got into black belts. But as a green belt, he was beating black belts. And that was back in the early 80s, the late 70s, early 80s, as a green belt, doing all that stuff. So, what I'm saying is, what are you doing? What do you know about martial arts? How do you train? Don't just stop doing it if you're not on the right path. That's fixable. When I was a third degree black belt, I had to fix a lot of stuff. And the teacher I just mentioned, me and him had the same teacher. But I saw that the person that I originally went to, for Matsubiyashi Rudy, Rakido, was all about the money. And he did not teach me correctly. And then I transferred from him to Mike Wilson, who was a classmate at the time. But then he became my sensei. He became my primary sensei, Matsubiyashi Rudy, Chonru. And he became my sensei. And he's made me what I am today. The biggest thing I liked about him is he didn't tell me, good job, unless it was good job. He didn't have to give me, he didn't do things to build up your confidence. He said, you either have confidence or you don't. He said, you can go to all these schools, they tell you, we're going to build your confidence, self-esteem, and all that stuff. All right? What about your techniques? What about your skills? Get out there on the street, something happens, somebody hits you, all that went out the door. If you got blasted hard, they hit you hard. So you got to understand that it's self-confidence, self-esteem is not going to help you to defend yourself in the self-defense. That is going to help your emotional standpoint, not your physical. So if you want to work on your physical, you have to train physical. Work on emotions, you can train you with emotions. So you have to realize what is what. Bring knowledge to the table. Bring wisdom. Train under a teacher that has wisdom and knowledge, that understands what's what. At the same time, they have compassion. They treat you with kindness. They teach discipline. On that token, let's move over to MMA. I don't support MMA for the simple fact that most of them have a lack of discipline, a lack of respect. They holler and they yell at each other, they put the fist in front of each other. They do a lot of ill-respectful things. You go to a martial arts tournament, even though they might lack skill, they respect one another. They bow to each other, they shake their hands, they introduce themselves, they talk to each other. Constantly respecting one another in a martial arts tournament. In an MMA match, no. They're different. Which means they lack. They're lacking the art, the way of life. They're lacking what it is. And all what they're focused on is to fight. And in reality, it just becomes a ruin. They're just tearing up the martial arts. It's destruction to the arts. If I am going to do something that's on the same lines as MMA, in the Korean martial arts, it would be something called Hapkido. Hapkido is a very, they grapple, they strike, and they have weapons. As long as you find a good Hapkido instructor, that's important. There is it's called, you can look up Hapkido instructional DVD on YouTube, and they have like green mats out there, and they're training, and it's a Hapkido, and a long video, about an hour. Watch that. Those are That's a very, very practical martial arts system, along with respect and discipline. So I'll go that way before I go MMA. And then we're going to flip over to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Lately, I really don't have nothing against them. The only thing I have against them is they down their ancestry, or they down Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. They're the only style in history that I heard of that downs the style that they came from. Instead of uplifting it. So if you down where you came from, what are you saying about yourself? It don't make sense. So you say, okay, the father, the head of the family, the head of Gracie, studied, trained in judo under this particular Japanese guy that visited that region. And that guy, that judo, came from jiu-jitsu, actually Aikido jiu-jitsu. So you're saying that judo's bad? Aikido jiu-jitsu's bad? So you're saying all these things are bad. So what you're saying is, it was just a combat that came from Brazil that is good. So then why did you train in judo? If you already had all the knowledge, why did you train in judo? If that's what you're saying. I'm not knocking the style. They're very practical on the ground and the ring with one opponent. It's a very good sport. Very good sport. And it will be very good as a self-defense against one opponent. Any grappling. I'm not knocking just them, but any time you grapple, because your hands are occupied and you're on the ground and nobody's going to kick your face in. Whereas striking, split second, boom, wham. You can hit that person, Whereas grappling, I've seen it. I've been out on the streets and seen certain situations. I've seen somebody try to grapple somebody and they just get their face stomped in. I mean, they're just stomping the crap out of them like it's a big rat, like they're trying to kill. Yeah, they just stomp them. And blood everywhere. And then another scenario that I've seen was, what I heard on the news is where somebody tried to grapple somebody in a parking garage. Because it was being assaulted. Well, yeah, you got him and just getting them and grappling them up and rolling them and doing all that stuff, but then the guy pulled a knife out and just went to town, all to the gut. Grappling didn't help him. Sometimes you need striking. You be well-rounded. Everything works good if you perform it correctly and together. Everything comes together. Bring everything together. That's why we have these different arts, these different martial arts. And we bring them together. Striking is beautiful. Grappling is beautiful. Weaponry is beautiful. Study all three. And make them work with how your body harmonizes. Everybody's body flows differently. So the way you put it together might be different than somebody else. So you want to make sure that you put something together that's going to work for you. It doesn't have to be, this is how this martial arts program operates. How does it work for you? And that's how each style came about. Just like with Tode. Tode was the original name of karate. But with Tode, they had all this other stuff inside of it. It looked a lot like Salat from the Philippines or Indonesia. Salat, you think of Salat, and then you think of Okinawan martial arts. We did a lot of trade. They did a lot of trading back and forth. So they had a lot of relations. And Salat looks a lot like how Tode looked back in the day. What happened when they went to Japan, turned into karate, they got more rigid, looked more pretty. All the other stuff where it just was like boom, boom. The hand didn't come back here like this back in the day. It didn't come back here. That was added in Japan. Hand rested. That's why you have these. The hands go here. Boom, boom, boom. Everything flowed. And if you look more into it, like I said, don't take my word for it. Look into it. Come up with your own ideas. But have concrete evidence. FightingArts.com gives you those resources. You're able to see, okay, this happened. This happened because all these masters says it happened. All these masters were there. I wasn't. You wasn't. They were there. And they have the records. And they will show you. And they have all these people that wrote all these things. Now, we think about these books being written back in the day. What's the difference of a book being written today and back in the day? Because when it's written back in the day, and even some books that's written today, it depends on what publishing company you go to. You look and see if that book is a true story. If it's a true story, then that book is, everything in it has to be true. And that's what resources and references are. So everything in that book is a non-fictional book. So you get your information from a non-fictional book, you know it's true, it's accurate. Because the publishing company is not going to publish fiction in a non-fictional book. It would destroy that publishing company. That's a note to remember. And with that, I hope this helps you in some ways. And if there was any error, mistakes, anything that I made on my part, please don't hesitate. Comment. Tell me. What did I do? Give me some, but you have to give me the evidence. You have to tell me where I can find this information at. And we can talk in detail with it. And I don't dislike criticism. I love it. That's knowledge. That's how I learn. So we can help each other. Let's grow together. Thank you.